we're asking real people who are running real businesses that we can relate to.
He said, identify the basics and keep doing them well. Don't lose sight of them as the business grows.
Now, that's quite a tricky one to have, isn't it? Because as soon as you have a plan B, you're admitting that plan A may not work.
But honesty and integrity, lead by example. So I guess authentic leadership.
People who are really passionate about the business, it rubs off on you. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I thought I'd try and start a bit brighter and breezier. Sometimes
It just
we
threw
record
me because
these.
it is lunchtime.
Oh, is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Gosh. Oh, yeah, it is.
The day's gone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good evening and good night. I watched the Truman Show the other day.
Oh, that's classic.
Classic.
Great film. Great film.
Yeah.
So what have you got for us this week?
What have I got? Well, I was going to recall a story because viewers might be interested in this story.
Okay. You say you was going to. Are you now having second thoughts?
Well, I always have second thoughts about these things.
Back yourself.
Well, it was more kind of, I don't know, it's a bit of a random one really, but
Okay.
I was having a conversation with the kids in the car
Okay.
this morning on the way to school, and one of my daughter's friends has just done her ballet grade 5, so she's got through that.
Pretty impressive.
So,
yeah, grade 5. Yeah.
and I used to do a lot of the ballet trips to the, as you do, taking the kids to ballet and all that type of thing. And I would always talk about how I was actually an expert in ballet. I was, demi poupée.
Well, you're very balletic.
Well, the
figure.
demi poupée kind of was my trademark move.
Was it?
That they never knew about. And I said, well, you've got to get to a certain level before they teach you. That was always the mystique around it. So it's been a long running joke that. And then it got onto. They said, "Well, you'd just be ridiculous doing ballet. You'd be like some kind of ginger bear, just prancing around." So that led me on to think, well, if this all goes wrong, if we stop doing a podcast, I thought I could start my own ballet show, and it would be called "Come to the Cave." That's the title of the show, and it would basically be the ballet bear, me,
The ginger bear.
yeah, the ballet bear, and. The show would largely be kind of sort of an interactive experience, but mostly me hunting out salmon on the stage as doing ballet.
Do you think this has got a long enough run? I don't know what the arc is.
So it was kind of like an interactive food show, come ballet,
food show,
come modern art sort of thing.
Like cookery show with ballet combined?
Mostly just watching me eat salmon on stage with ballet in between in a balletic manner. So we kind of expanded on that. So that was my morning actually. It was mostly workshopping this in the car on the way to school.
Okay.
And I think I might be on something. I don't know.
Well, okay. I think it's a while until ChatGPT can replace this sort of nonsense. I think we're safe.
Well, I did watch something the other day on social media, a modern art show, obviously very high end, seemed very, you could tell members of the, intelligentsia were present. It looked as though the art fraternity. And it was basically a woman sort of whacking a lump of butter with a microphone.
That's
and
art.
Everyone sort of applauded at the end, and they all went very good. That means there's some sort of deconstructionist theme going on there.
You just talked about it, which suddenly it's had an impact. That's art.
And so there was some sort of music as it hit the thing, and she ended up crying at the end of it and all that, which I could imagine happening at the end of Come to the Cave, to be honest.
It would be a very emotional experience.
So for everyone. So yeah.
I don't want to cut this short, but I think we should save our dear listener any more of this torture and move into a podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
You okay if I do that? You sure? I don't want you crying. Hello and welcome to another episode of the SME Growth Podcast from Wellmeadow. It's Richard and me, Dave, here again. And after that intro, it can only get more serious from here.
It can only get, well, we hope so.
So, tell me what episode number we're on.
121.
121. 1 to 1.
1 to 1.
1 to 1. Let's have a 1 to 1.
Let's have 1 to 1. What's the darts finish on?
Darts finish. Well, that's easy because I always remember 17 is 51. So that leaves 70, and you can easily get 70, can't you? 30 and a 40, or you can have a 60 and a 10, all sorts.
Yeah.
But you could have a 19, 57, that leaves 64, so you can do 64 in a number of different ways as well. So there's loads of ways to get
121. Easy.
Not
easy
difficult
one.
at all. Yeah.
Easy one.
We need to get to higher numbers. How did we get here? What were the last 3 episodes?
So last episode, 120, was Have You Forgotten to Listen to Your Customers?
Yep.
And that was all about trying to take yourself out of the picture and all that, and actually get the feedback from the customers.
And be aware your market might move on, tastes change, and so on. And would you be aware? Okay, that was 120. What about 119?
119 was surviving the AI expertise shakeup.
An increasing lake of knowledge and a lowering cost of getting to it causes a bit of a crisis. And then 118? 118.
I've got visions of people.
We should have had the T-shirts for that
T-shirts and the headbands, sweatbands, and how to deliver a killer sales pitch.
Yeah, which we're still rumbling on, and we will update listeners with, but all going well so far on the results of our killer sales pitch. That we had another meeting on that this morning. So that's very good. So this week we thought, and I don't know why I thought this, but there's a book, and we should look up who wrote the book.
Who wrote the book?
I'm going to look that up. Stall for me. Speak. The Just One Thing. Listeners will have no doubt heard of Just One Thing.
Just One Thing. Well, whilst you're looking that up,
Michael Mosley.
There we go. That's great.
Actually, it must be some other. Michael Mosley did write Just One Thing, and that was more about the health thing. If you could just do one health thing, wasn't it? Okay. But there was another book, and I'll have to look it up and put it in the show notes, to do with asking people for one piece of advice. And he went around lots of famous people, Richard Branson, and and I said, if there's one thing you could give as advice to other people for life, what would it be? So I don't know why I had that thought yesterday, but I thought, well, if I just send that out to a bunch of people, I wonder what reaction I'd get. That simple question. I'm thinking of doing a podcast episode on the one piece of advice you would give. And I gave the context of either to grow a business or to be a good leader. And I waited to see what came back. And I was inundated.
Richard Branson get back to you?
He hasn't yet. I'm waiting. My people have spoken to his people.
But we've got
I think we got better.
Selection.
I mean, no disrespect, Richard, if you're listening, as I know you do. I'm sure your insights are very interesting, but everyone's heard them, quite frankly. We know where you are.
We've read the book.
We've
read the books.
Got the T-shirt. We've been there, done that. But we're asking real people who are running real businesses that we can relate to, not your virgins, and all that lot. We're talking about people who've run and led SME businesses. And we're asking
Salt the earth business folk.
Salt the earth, yes. Don't get me started on accents. We'll be going down a rabbit hole there. So I was inundated with responses. So I've sent out 120 messages to people, and I've had half of them come back already with their pithy one-liners. So we thought we'd start. This is probably going to run on to more than an episode, unless we really rattled through them. And so to get the value of them, we'll see how far we get through today, and we might do a part 2.
Might do.
And who knows, maybe even a part 3. Listeners have got all that in store.
Look at this.
So thank you, everyone that I contacted, for your feedback. Very good of you. I've got some really pithy ones here. And I thought as we go through them, we'll give a name check to the person who gave the idea, having got their permission, don't worry. And then maybe just reflect on that a bit ourselves. How relevant is that to our world and all that sort of thing? So in no particular order, other than the order they were in my message feed on my phone, Tom's up first. Tom Meehan. Now, Tom is my PT, and he happened to be on my list of people I'd ask. He does run a very successful fitness training gym. He's a High Rocks training club, which is all the rage.
Been the victim of that.
You've been there. You've met Tom.
Yeah.
And he set it up from scratch. Great little, anything that requires a lot of capital, as a gym would do, and you're starting off from scratch, that's where leasing really comes into its own, right? So you can lease the kit, pay monthly for it as the income comes in. So he managed to start from scratch, got himself some great premises, leased all the kit, brand new kit. And he's got such a brilliant brand. He's got such a personality with it. He brings people in. Yep. And the High Rocks phenomenon is helping to drive a lot of that.
I've been to a few different High Rocks sessions in different places, and I would say Tom's is the best.
Oh, see, he'll be so pleased to hear that. So what did he say? In a word, he said it'd be passion. Interesting. And he sort of explains that then, said whether that's for a project that you're on, the service you're giving, the end goal, whatever it is, whatever you're doing, do it with some passion. And if you have, then it'll just make you work harder, and things will happen. It'll influence people around you and get motivated by it, and they'll discover their passions from it as well. So that's where he came from. I thought that is really good. If you now relate that to our world and clients we've met, we've come across some really passionate business people before.
Oh, we sure have. We really, really have.
And some of them are in this room.
Getting passionate, get fired up. Yeah. But
also, it's interesting that we get a lot of people who are at the opposite end of the spectrum. and are not at all passionate. They see their job or their business as a bit humdrum, run-of-the-mill, especially if they've been at it for a long time. And it is incredible the difference, isn't it? People who really love what they do, it is infectious.
Tigers versus eels.
Tigers versus eels, yeah. A Milne. Do we have to pay him a licence fee for mentioning his characters?
I don't know.
He's probably long gone.
Yeah, you'd be all right. I think we'll get away with that one.
Thank you very much, him. So Tigers and eels. But you're right, people who are really passionate about the business, it rubs off on you. And it's like if you smile at someone, they smile back, right?
Yeah.
And I think as a leader, if you show that you're really passionate about what you're trying to achieve, it's not a job anymore. It's a calling, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I can see that from Tom's point of view, he's trying to persuade people to put that extra bit of effort in. When it's got uncomfortable, he's got to get people to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that's where I think his passion, both for his business, but also to help you get passionate about what you're trying to achieve. So I thought that was pretty good, that one.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I like that one.
I got one. Now print them out so you can read some of my messages as well.
Yeah.
You know the next one.
So Clive Beardmore.
Yeah, now we've been working with Clive for 15 years or so, haven't we?
Mm.
Clive and his business.
So initially he said he'd come back to you. But he must have come back pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Because
in the space of the same message.
In the same message, he said, put yourself in your customer's shoes. Would you be delighted?
Yeah. Now he owns a company called Dalen Limited and has brand names called Top Tech and Dalen Healthcare and things. They're based over in the Birmingham area. They're manufacturers, good old metal bashing, everything from laser cutting, bending, welding, powder coating, assembly and stuff. And they make technical furniture mainly for either the university sector or the healthcare NHS type sector. So they're really good, salt of the earth, employs lots of good skilled tradespeople on the shop floor to help put these things together, and they customize everything they do. So he's come up with this model which relies on competing with cheap Chinese imports. Mm. Now that's pretty tough these days, right? You can buy, if you just wanted a desk that you could put a computer in, then you'd probably get one of a catalogue somewhere at a fraction of the price. And yet he's running this phenomenally successful growing business on the back of, I think, this advice, which is give your customers what they want, put yourself in their shoes and ask what they want. And it's an interesting word he uses there, delighted, isn't it? It's not just meet their requirements, not just satisfied.
Yeah.
And so he's always going one step beyond. Now there's a song about that.
Well, I was just about to say, if you want to hear more about the Dalen story, we actually had Adam Beardmore on the podcast.
Yes.
Who's
now the MD,
related.
Clive's son,
Episode 58.
Oh, was it? Oh, well done for doing that.
Episode 58, just had a quick scroll
Well,
through.
he talked about getting into the healthcare sector from a standing start, didn't he?
Breaking into new markets.
Breaking into markets. That was very good. Yeah, and that was a really good episode, so thanks again, Adam, for coming in on that. But I think this is what Clive said there about would you be delighted if you're in your customer's shoes, is something that we've often said before. We always want to delight the customer, which is so easy to say, but the point is every time you get a piece of work, you think, what would be the normal response, which would be, oh, thanks a lot. Yeah. And what would be that extra level of, oh, my goodness, that's amazing. Yeah. And we're always trying to define and then deliver that, oh, my goodness thing.
Yeah.
So we've probably put it in slightly different words. But yeah, always delight the customer.
Yeah.
And to do that, you've really got to understand their perspective. And understand what their problem is that they're trying to solve, not just what they've asked you to do.
Yeah, he uses the word, the word Clive uses there is to summarize that, it's like empathy. So you have that, and really get deep under the skin and feel the pain.
Now, because I asked for people's advice on either growing a company or as being a senior leader, he gave me 2 answers. He also gave me a leadership answer as well. And his main one there is about being consistent, being fair, even-handed and consistent with the team. Yep. And that is so hard to do. And yet we all strive to do it, don't we? So good advice there.
Good advice, yeah.
Good. Now, Rob, we had a LinkedIn post recently with Rob on it because he installed an amazing wall-mounted big dashboard screen in our office, and indeed our front office screens that you can see as you drive past the window. He runs a company called Sound Innovations. Now, I've done a school talk with Rob where I heard more of his background and life story, and it is phenomenal. He started out in business and he went to an apprenticeship and that didn't work out because it was very sad bereavement at the time, and then he set up his own business selling disco kit because he was a DJ, and then that one thing led to another, and he bought another shop and built on. And now he runs this company installing AV equipment into schools.
Yep.
And he's become quite a brand name in that space. He's well known. He goes to all the conferences.
Yeah.
People are calling him up. So he has been very, very successful at doing something in what you would have thought would be quite a tight sector. Schools don't have massive budgets, and he's having to come up with these AV systems for them. Anyway, what's his advice?
He said, identify the basics and keep doing them well. Don't lose sight of them as the business grows.
Yeah, and I think you can almost imagine where some people get a bit so carried away with the new shiny thing to do, they forget that the main thing you're there for is what he's calling the basics.
Stick to the knitting.
Stick to the knitting.
Core competencies.
Yeah, at least do the core competencies, yeah. It's all very well having a bit of R&D, coming up with a bit of flashy new stuff, but not instead of the basics.
You know what? If I go to a restaurant and there's too many things on the menu, it's a big warning sign for me. You can't do them all. You can't cook 50 dishes really well. If you go there and there's 3 or 4 things you think, right, you're going to have really dialed in on that. And I think maybe that's kind of what's going on. I did think, though, for a company that's called Sound Innovation, to use something to say don't lose sight, I thought you've gone for the visual metaphor on the audio company.
Well, I can't think of what the oral metaphor would be. Don't
be deaf to the don't be deaf to the basics. There we go. That's why we do this and not. That's
why he's better at this than we are. Well done, Rob.
But yeah.
So identify the basics and keep doing them well. And I think that's something we could all maybe just do with being reminded of from time to time, because we're all getting carried away all the time. What's the next new thing? How do we do that? But actually, there's something fundamental we've got to do right first.
Yeah, I think if you can't do the basics well, then maybe don't.
Yeah. No point having the icing if you haven't got the cake.
Don't try and run before you can walk.
Oh, this is going to be a show of cliches. We should have some sort of bingo card for that.
We should do, really, yeah.
All right, Rob. And thanks again, Rob, for all the work you've done in helping us with our dashboards and display screens and stuff. Cracking job.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the next one I'm going to keep anonymous, purely because anybody who knows him might know a little bit about this. But his first one, and he gave me with 3. The first one was choose your business partners wisely, and you can probably from that tell why I'm going to keep him anonymous. We know from his background that he had actually a very successful business, and he partnered with a number of different firms at different times. But one of them didn't go quite the way he wanted to. So that was where that piece of advice came from.
Yeah.
A bit raw. But the other 2 came up with, possibly because we'd been working with him for a while, he said, first, employ an FD, which is something that we tried to get them to do, and that was something around the management at the financial level of their business. And you get some companies that start out without an FD. I get it. Maybe you have a bookkeeper or an accountant that can step up. But there comes a point when you really need that FD level of input. And remember, I did a podcast with Adam, who's a fractional FD, CFO. If you like, CFO. If you like. So, and I have to look up his podcast number as well. But he was very good at this sort of thing, where you can get the expertise of a CFO, of an FD, without having to employ one.
Yeah.
But this chap gave that advice that sooner rather than you think, get yourself that sort of expertise on your team. And the third piece of advice he gave was to be prepared to pay for outsourced advice. And that was a nod to the advice that we gave him, I think, because we saved them from a few different things and pointed them in the right direction and helped them out quite a lot. So nice for him to give credit for that, but I think that's where that piece of advice came from.
Your CFO podcast with Adam Cooper is episode 56. That wasn't hard to find.
Just like that?
Episode 58 was Adam.
Oh, I see.
Episode 56,
Adam Beardmore.
Adam Beardmore.
Which is a show of Adam's.
This is, yeah.
So thanks for the Adam. So Adam Cooper, 56, he runs an outsourced CFO, FD company, and does a podcast. I think it's a weekly podcast on that, which I was on once as well. So that was that anonymous piece of advice. Choose your partners wisely, employ an FD, and take on outside advice. Now, the next one I got from Chris. I'm not sure if you've met Chris. He works for he said he'd rather not declare the name of the company, but it's a big national company in the construction sector. And he talks about being led by your own instincts and trusting your inner voice. And this is going to crop up in some of the other pieces of advice we've got as well from different people.
Yeah.
And you do worry that people tend to get a bit conscious about what they think other people are expecting of them.
Yeah.
And they internalize that and make that their opinion rather than having their own honest opinion.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've come across that in any of your clients where you really have to sort of push them for answers and really challenge them on, is that really what you believe, or is that just what you think I want to hear?
Yeah, there's a certain kind of, I think part of his answer as well, he talks about not trying to mimic or copy what other businesses are doing.
Yeah.
There's a certain kind of know yourself a little bit in this, isn't it? And there's,
true.
On a personal note, he talks about as well that as you know, early in your career, it can be quite hard to know that, and it's only sort of time shows. Well, this is what I was thinking. Oh, that situation proved out to line up with what I was thinking, and you start to get that. You start to build that trust, don't you? Of like, actually, I can trust my gut.
You
on
need
this
the confidence
and the experience and wisdom, isn't it? It's like business wisdom, really.
But once you've got that and you're prepared to step up and speak out.
Yeah, I guess that's another part of it, isn't it? Stepping up and speaking out when you see something and having that confidence to challenge or...
Yeah, and I think certainly from the industries, I mentioned that he was in the construction sector, that's got some fantastic, high-quality, world-class players in it, but it also is blighted, like many industries are, with some of the smaller firms that don't necessarily operate in the same way. And there is a danger, which I think he's pointing out, certainly when you're starting out, that if you see business being done in a certain way that you instinctively know isn't right, but that's the way everybody's doing it, then you're in danger of just falling in and making that happen again and just sort of perpetuating that model. So I think he's sort of standing up for what he now knows and he always knew, but now he's able to effect it because he's in a more senior role and he can change those things.
Stick to your values.
Stick to your values.
Know your values, stick to them.
Yeah, exactly. Now go on, you read this next one then from Marcus.
So I don't know Marcus, but
he's a character. I'll get Marcus in one day. He's brilliant. Go on.
Well, retired military doctor.
He is. He's ex-Special Forces.
Right.
He's commander in the Navy. And now he's a GP running a very successful practice in Shropshire. It's got 50 staff and 12,500 patients and all that sort of thing. So I think his advice, though, came more from his military background.
Yeah. So good leadership, which is very, I guess, drilled into you in the armed forces.
Exactly. That's what the military is well known for.
But honesty and integrity, lead by example. So I guess authentic leadership, that's something we've touched on quite a few times. I think be prepared to muck in. There's some words there that we couldn't possibly repeat on this podcast, but
we've had worse.
do jobs that perhaps you don't, you don't want to do. But I think that is important, isn't it? I think when people see senior people doing things that maybe junior people do, or just doing the jobs that someone's got to unblock the toilet.
No one's above, we talked about it before, no one's above the unblocking of the toilet or the unloading of the dishwasher or the making of the cup of tea for the visitor that comes in. I love it when someone who's middle ranking or whatever in a company has a visitor and the MD offers to make the tea for the guests so that the person receiving the guest can just get on another chat. What a brilliant sign that shows.
It was humility, isn't it? Which is actually a part of.
Yeah.
I think when what was his name? Jim Collins did a review of leadership, and a level 5 leader for Jim Collins, which was the top of the scale, had a combination of humility and resolve. Yeah, and maybe that's partly what
that
Marcus
gets mentioned in one of the other responses.
What Marcus is touching on here, that resolve. I think there is a part of when you're mucking in, you just want to get the job done, right?
Yeah. So I think it's part of the mucking in, we're all in this together stuff. I think there's a part of it as well, which is what Marcus mentions there. Don't sit in an ivory tower. Don't have your MD's office in the corner of the top floor and no one's allowed to get to top floor without special pass and all this nonsense. Put yourself in the middle of it all. I love the idea that we have an open plan office and everybody's walking past each other and chatting and often overhearing each other's phone calls. There's no protected, you obviously have confidential discussions when you need to have in a separate room, but otherwise no one is unapproachable and one unloads the dishwasher.
You do have a golden robe though.
Yeah, I know.
Well. and we do have to crawl past your desk. Coming in but other than that, we're very egalitarian.
The listeners might
egalitarian.
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 Indeed.
And also, Marcus talks about growth. So go for it, but have a plan B.
Yes, exactly. Now, that's quite a tricky one to have, isn't it? Because as soon as you have a plan B, you're admitting that plan A may not work. But he's pointing out that if you've got to be able to hold those two almost competing, like when we talk about passion, like Tom said, you've got to be passionate and you've got to really believe in it and do it. But without diminishing that passion, you've got to know what happens if it doesn't work without thinking it might not work. So that's quite hard two concepts to hold authentically, isn't it?
Well, SME Growth Podcast and Ballybear.
Which one's the right be? Excellent thought. So thanks, Marcus. I know you're very successful in what you're doing and you're an inspiration with everything that you tell us all about with your stories in the past. But certainly that idea of not walking too tall and being helpful at whatever level. Make sure you're in touch with the people you work with.
Yep.
And then on the growth point, have a plan B. I think we can probably fit another couple in.
Yep. To go for it.
Do you remember when we used to work for Broadlane?
Yes.
Now, these guys were tremendously successful retailers, dealership, weren't they, in the caravan and motorhome campervan market. Was it the largest one in the UK or?
One of.
Nigh on. One of the top few really big ones. I think the main suppliers, the likes of the Coachmans and the Swifts of this world and all that lot, they certainly put them on a pedestal and they won lots of awards. So fantastically successful company.
Always a pleasure with Broadlane Leisure.
In fact, every time we met Darren, he used to say, he's fantastic, isn't he? Energy, bundle of energy. So what was his advice? This may sound familiar.
Sound familiar? Always trust your inner self, your gut feeling, the chatter that's guiding you.
Yeah, so this idea that there's something on your shoulder there whispering in your ear, that sort of gut feel. And it goes back to what Chris said there as well, isn't it? Being led by your own instincts.
Yep.
It's a common theme across lots of these things. Yep. And I think with him, he's so focused on customer service and knowing the product and treating people well, that it's all about believing what's right, knowing what's right, and then following through.
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes when you get told stuff you don't believe, don't just take it as read, just because someone's got maybe the qualifications or the experience or the gravitas to have said that unquestioningly. Question everything.
Yep.
And if you've got that suspicion that maybe your gut feel is right, then go with it. Good point, that one.
Point.
And a great business that these guys run down in Broadlane.
Yep.
Very good. Right, so the next one then, it's another one of these that I think will keep anonymous because of the experience. But this chap runs a consulting company that specialises in procurement, which is a bit of a specialist area. But he's obviously had some experience in the past with building his team. And he says the best piece of advice he can give as you're building the team is fire the wrong ones quickly. So, heartfelt piece of advice.
Hire slow, fire fast.
Hire slow, fire fast. Yeah, fair point.
Yeah.
Well, it's really, I've often noticed this, is people get a bit carried away in the recruitment process because it's all positive, isn't it? Candidates are very positive to show themselves off. Yep. Recruiters get a nice warm feeling about giving somebody a new opportunity and all that. Everyone loves it. And you get down the road a little bit and it hasn't worked out because maybe you've gone too fast. And you have the entirely opposite emotions when you've got to unwind what you've done.
Yep.
So he quoted someone who I do know saying, better a hole than an arsehole. Are we allowed to say that on the podcast?
Well, I think we could probably get away with it.
Anyway, so the point being that if you can't be sure that someone's going to be right for the role, wait a bit.
Yeah.
Don't choose the best of the applicants if that isn't good enough. If that doesn't meet your requirements.
I think there's another point in there about how would you describe people in your team to your mates in the pub?
Yeah, that's true.
After 6 months, kind of.
That's good.
How you talk about it. I think that's a good litmus test for anything in business, really.
Yeah.
When you're talking to your friends, family, or whatever, how do you describe something, in ways that they don't just roll their eyes and get bored of, as many business owners.
And I think we all secretly know when you've recruited someone, probably after, not instantly, you've got to give people a chance, right? 6 months, I think this chap says about 6 months. By then, anyway, you should know. And you've got a gut feel, back to what we were talking earlier on with what Darren said and Chris. Trust your gut feel. If it's not working, it's unlikely to turn around and your gut feel change.
Well, I would still always love to try my cup of tea, piece of toast recruitment strategy. I think if I watch someone make a cup of tea, piece of toast, you can put whatever you want on it.
Right.
I think I could pretty much tell you whether or not
What, just the order they do things in?
Yeah.
Are they going to switch the kettle on before?
How are they going to go about it? How do they, what's the quality? If you could let them pick ingredients as well, I would know. I would say.
So this isn't a project management test. This is how to make.
Project management, quality, presentation, all of those sorts of things. How does it all look?
Right.
And do you know what inspired me to remember that the other day?
No.
My son was making a piece of toast.
I was going to say, we've never used that in our recruitment process.
He's making a piece of toast, and he actually cut the toast in half before putting it in the toaster. And I said to him, we need to have a chat about this.
Well, you've got to learn. He might have stumbled across a much better way of doing it. You've got to celebrate innovation.
Well, that is one way of looking at it.
And it's a learning opportunity.
But I just reminded me, I thought, the roast dinner test is a bit more extravagant, but the cup of tea, piece of toast, recruitment test, you'd learn a lot about someone.
It'd be odd, wouldn't it? You get invited to an interview and you get taken to the kitchen and say, could you just make us all a piece of toast and a cup of tea?
Yeah, I just want to see how you do it.
There's got to be a more practical way of doing that. But I like it. Fair enough. Yeah. So the point is, this chap is saying, make sure that you don't lower your standards based on the applicant pool. Get someone who you want, and it's better to have a gap than someone who's going to be a problem for you that you then have to remove on. And I think that's true as well, because the amount of energy required, not just in putting up with someone underperforming or not being right for the role, but also the act of getting rid of somebody, it's a big down on everybody on the team.
Yeah.
Good.
Definitely.
Okay. I think one more, because it's a short one, and then we'll call it a day for episode 1 of this series, part 1 of the series. And that's from Adrian Delamere, Finance Director at Salop Design and Engineering, or SDE, here in Shrewsbury. Big metal pressings plant, supplying the automotive industry, consumer products and all that sort of thing. Very successful, long-standing firm, 60 years of history and more.
Yep.
And he gave me one word. Focus.
Focus.
Which I thought was a nice self-serving answer, because it was a very focused answer.
Yeah, it's...
He could have just said brief. Focus. So then I said, I was wondering then whether he meant focus in terms of the business strategy, laser-like focus, and it wasn't so much that. It was the way you work.
Okay.
So that was quite interesting. So more about be focused on what you're trying to do. Now, that probably comes more naturally to some people than others, because some people naturally prefer parallel processing 20 things at once and flitting like a butterfly from one to the other. But certainly the way Adrian's describing it from his experience is do something, start something, finish it, and get it done. And I think this applies as much to the leadership style, the strategy and vision of your company. Have something quite clear that you're going on and stick at it and do it. I thought that was a good piece of advice as well. Yeah,
it's almost like there's different levels of that, I think, isn't there? So you could almost have a time boxing type of thing. Right, okay, I've really got to get this task done, and a focused energy on that. But I think also at a higher level, how many strategic objectives can you really work on at any one time?
Yeah,
do you try and push 100 things forward 1%, or focus on 2 or 3 and
get
really drive
done,
them home?
Put a line under it, get that working, move on to the next thing. I think that also gives you a greater sense of achievement. I think if you focus on something and do it and move on to the next thing, you feel like it's a series of campaigns rather than just continuous skirmishes across a broad front line. Do you like my military analogy there? Do you like that? Shaped up.
Look at that. Strategy,
Good. Right, well, we've got loads more of those. We'll decide how to spread these out over a number of episodes. But thank you very much for all the contributors who sent the responses in, and not just the ones that we've covered today, but all the others, and they're still rolling in as we speak. So thanks a lot for that.
Okay.
Think it was good?
Yeah.
Think we'll survive it to a part 2 of that?
Could do. Yeah, I think so. There's plenty more advice coming through.
Yes, good advice. Yeah, thank you. And it could well be that we get some of these contributors on as guests as well, because some of them have shown an interest too. So thanks for that. Good. Thank you very much then for listening to another episode of the SME Growth Podcast from Wellmeadow, where today we've shared some pearls of wisdom from various of our listeners, and thank you very much to them for sending them in. If you've got a pearl of wisdom you want to send in, please do so, and we'll include that as well. And also, if you think this is a good style of episode, then please share that with your friends and people in business that you know, and get them to listen to the podcast. And in the meantime, good luck with your business.